word. I felt all of the color drain from my face. What? George, what do you mean by that? I put my hand to my throat in a very Angelica-like way and gasped in a bit of air. George fumbled around for something to say. It needs work here and there, I mean. I swallowed at the lump that was interfering with my breathing. Where, George? I can take suggestions. I rifled the 2 pages like there were more. The whole thing? The whole thing is bad, Sage. It doesn't make sense. Maybe a few classes in creative writing would help you? We could take them together next year. Or maybe we could see what this little book has to say about creative writing. George padded to the thick manual he'd ordered from the bookstore. How to study for the ACT. Seemed to be a part of my walking nightmare. George always tells me how important college is. I don't agree with him. I'm gifted. I tell you, George, I said, chewing on the end of my pencil, something my father, the dentist, is always telling me not to. I am not going to college. I plan to be a writer. A successful writer. A mystery. Or romance writer. I'll thrill the world with a beautiful Angelica. I decided not to mention the C word again. Maybe if I didn't, George would forget that crap comment, and that truth sucked too. George lifted one eyebrow. He always does that when I talk about romance. Miss Chapin says, I interrupted him. First of all, I had plenty of similes. You're right. Secondly, you don't have to experience something to write about it. And for all you know, Mr. George Blanford, I have been experiencing romance. I stared off into the distance. It wouldn't be that many more days before the snow fell. Flat white clouds skimmed across the deep blue of the early afternoon sky. It would make a perfect setting for an Angelica story. Perhaps I could write a mystery romance. I felt a little breathless at the thought. You're 15, Sage. You've never been kissed, except in the 2nd grade. You know nothing of romance.
Oh, shit got real.
Romance with a capital R.
We're going to break this into 2 parts.
When George said romance, it sounded like it had a capital R. Oh, I said that and then I read it, okay?
How do you do that? Romance.
I know how old I am, I said. And anyway, I've been doing research. Research? George asked. Yes, research. I've been talking to Sherry about kissing. She told me all I need to know. Sherry is definitely the kiss encyclopedia at the Schoolcraft High School, George said under his breath. Sherry and George aren't the best of friends, even though she and I are close. I rolled my eyes. I've never let you kiss me, but that doesn't mean I've never been kissed. Besides, I'm saving myself for the right man, I said. And for your information, that did not happen in 2nd grade. That was a figment of your oversexed imagination.
What is happening?
George is the right man, but I haven't told him yet. I don't believe in throwing myself at anyone, much less at the one I love. It's just not very Angelica-like. Oversexed? George's voice went all high and squeaky. He stared at me through his polished glasses. Do you let that Taylor guy kiss you? You've dated him a lot. What do you see in him anyway? He's such a jerk. There's something about the guy I do not like. An unhappy look crossed over George's face. Why, if he had an eye patch on right now, he could play the part of the one-eyed cameraman. Once my book has been made into a miniseries. You don't like anyone I go out with, I said. You think that every guy I've ever dated is a jerk. That's not true, George said. I'm not a jerk. He pressed his hand against his dark green sweatshirt. And I didn't mind so much when you went out with my cousin Jeffrey. I don't think he's a jerk. George smiled at me in a cameraman-like way, then leaned closer. Our heads almost touched. We were seconds away from our first kiss. You've got blue ink mark by your nose, he said. That's because I've been working so hard writing. I felt around my face until George finally touched the spot where I had written on myself. His fingertip was cool. I tried to rub the ink off with spit and moved away a little. No need to learn about kissing firsthand right here in front of the lunchroom. How unromantic. By the way, the reason you didn't think Jeffrey was a jerk, even though he was because you knew he was going back to Florida and wouldn't be around but for that 1 week. Not like Bob or any of the other guys I've dated. Jeffrey? A jerk? Why? What did he do to you that was so jerky? George didn't say anything for a moment. He tried to kiss you, right? He told me he thought you were beautiful, but he wouldn't try anything with you. I sat quiet. That jerk! George said, and pounded his fist on the ACT study guide. Oh, George, I said, and laughed. George is passionate, and a perfectionist. He's already made plans to go to Kalamazoo Valley Community College, our local school, graduate with honors, then head off to Northern Michigan University at, how do you say that? Marquette?
Marquette?
I don't know. For his doctorate in English and communications. He's known this since the 2nd grade when he and I first met, and since today I've known that I'll be going with my passionate perfectionist. I'll support him with my writing. It's chapter 1.
There's this really weird obsessive relationship on both halves.
Yeah. Okay, so chapter 2. George. Sage and I have been best friends since the 2nd grade. We probably would have started palling around in the 1st grade, but I lived in Washington then, and she was here in Michigan, which is where my family moved not too long after I turned 7. I remember meeting her. It was the 3rd day of the 1st week of school. The kids were playing Girls Chase the Boys. I hated that game. I mean, what 7-year-old boy wants to be kissed by a girl? I wanted to read. So I hid in a low-limbed tree.
Limbered. It's a very limber tree! It just goes skipping across the field.
Yes, trees skip like that, you know. Anyways. So I hid in a low-limbed tree with a book tucked under my arm. I still remember the title. Prince Caspian. I kept one eye out for anyone who might try to attack me. I had just made myself comfortable when I heard someone from above say, "Get out of this tree and run, or I will kiss you right here and now." I recognized that someone as Sage, the girl who sat in the front of the class and talked a lot. She was good in math even then. I said, "Climb on down," and I did. There was no place to run in that tree. And when I stood on the ground, she leaped from a limb and landed in a crouch in front of me. Then she straightened up and put her hands on her hips. I could see that she meant business. "I'll give you one chance to get away," she said. A head start. Before I could even move, she kissed me right on the mouth, then ran off screaming, "George Blanford is my slave for the day!" I wiped her wet kiss off my lips with the back of my hand and glanced around to see who might have seen this humiliating
I never played that.
Well, apparently Sage and George's school played a different kind of mind game.
Michigan, huh?
Michigan. What you guys doing there, man? Sometimes I wonder if that kiss was the turning point in our lives. In my life. I mean, I'm your average looking guy. I have astigmatism and can't afford to get contacts for this problem. I have a cowlick that sticks up regardless of how much mousse or hairspray I use. I even tried Vaseline. Nothing works. I'm of average height, 5'9". Have average hair color, light brown. Average eye color, dark brown. I like sports, but I'm not that great at any of them. And my family is middle class. Pretty average, right? And yet, Sage Oliver is my best friend. And to me, Sage is not average.
Oh.
To me, she's perfect and beautiful. If I could explain a deep sigh of satisfaction, that would be Sage. She's tiny, 5'2", has long strawberry blonde hair, wild and crazy curly hair, straight white teeth with no under or overbite. Her father is a dentist. And she has green eyes. It's through those eyes that she sees the whole world as it really isn't. As a romance novel, with Angelica as the hero. Maybe she gets this writing idea from her mother. You've probably heard of Sage's mother. Lorna Lovelocks. That's her pen name. She's quite a famous writer.
Oh shit, son.
Sage is really good in math, and yet all she wants to do is write. I've tried to help her. I've told her to stick to equations. I've no passion for equations, she says. I've tried to get her to sign up for math club. Math club? Oh, George, how can I do math when Angelica is crying out to be freed from the prison of my brain? I've even tried to get her to write for the school paper, but Sage thinks it's too small. George, she says to me every time I ask her to write something simple, like a class evaluation or a play review. That's too easy. I need something to tax my imagination. Wow, I thought, watching her and barely listening the last time we talked about this. We were between classes, standing around, and I was watching her every move. I felt kind of tingly, but I didn't let it show. I couldn't. Everyone knows best friends don't become serious. I think there's some unwritten rule that says best friends always stay best friends, and that's it. It is easy writing, but Sage, it would give you the chance you need to practice. Practice? Sage's voice was dramatic. Practice what? You're writing. Or have you considered the stage? I wasn't kidding about the stage part. Sage always acts dramatic. I don't need to practice, George, Sage said, ignoring my acting comment. I write all the time. This is true. That's true, but you never finish anything. And anyway, there are rules people have to follow to work with the paper, and deadlines to meet. Sage let out a big breath. It smelled spearminty. I have a perfect example of meeting deadlines, George. My mother does it all the time. She always worries about her editor or agent being unhappy. Sage walked away that day, sure she didn't need help. I watched her go, my heart pumping so hard I was sure somebody was going to have to call the paramedics to revive me. She has a very serious walk.
This is all levels of uncomfortable.
I can't make comments or I'm going to lose my reading voice. It was some time later that things began to change for me. And since I wasn't expecting the change, everything seemed to start to fall apart. I knew the rules. Best friends stay best friends no matter what. And I had planned on living by that decree. So I couldn't know a month or so later, when I came out in the hallway from the newsroom, all that was going to happen. Who could? I was trying to stretch out my neck. It hurt from working on the computer so long. And then I saw Sage, pushing through the crowds. Sherry was talking with her, and they both looked serious. I think the most important thing in Sherry's life is when she breaks a nail. Anyway, Sage and Sherry separated at the lockers, and Sage started toward me. I watched and held my breath, waiting for her to see me. It almost hurt, that waiting for her to look in my direction. And when she did, she smiled. Can I even begin to tell you what Sage's smiles do to my heart? Trying to tame her hair with one hand and finally giving up, she came over to where I stood, blocking the newsroom door. I almost forgot to breathe. Move it, Blandford, said Sarah Newhouse, one of the sports writers for the paper. She shoved her way past me when I didn't step aside. It's not like I didn't want to get out of Sarah's way. Everybody gets out of her way when she says move. But the change had begun. The unspoken rule was now at risk. And it was all from seeing Sage. She paralyzed me.
Oh, so dramatic.
Has that ever happened to you?
No. Please tell me more, George.
Have you ever seen someone and found that you were frozen to the spot, knowing you'd remember that time and place forever? That happened to me.
No.
Sage had on a white shirt with ruffles all over it, tucked into a long denim skirt that touched the top of her leather boots. She looked like a girl from Fantasyland, her hair streaming over her shoulders, her skin lightly tanned. I was captivated by her. And then I wanted to do the impossible. I wanted to break out in song when I saw her coming toward me, walking through shafts of light that poured through the high windows and caught dust particles, then transformed them into tiny suns. I wanted to dedicate the SHS yearbook to her, even though I have absolutely no affiliation with it. I wanted to write a column about her, including thoughts and wonderings from my oversexed imagination. I wanted to write her a note and send it, folded like an airplane, on a draft of air that would land the plane right in her hand. Dear Sage, I love you. Do you love me? Check one box, yes or no. Yours forever, George. With all these things rolling in my mind, how could I catch even a glimpse of what lay ahead for the two of us?
I'm uncomfortable! Are
you reading this one?
Yes.
Okay. And chapter 3. It's a poem. The tree introduced us, that warm September, and we are like it now. The way the roots nourish the brown body and strong arms and crown of green, your smile replenishes me toward growth.
What the actual fuck?
So fluid that I so considered it and stop his rage with a hot kettle and a lonely gun. 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 So changed, a bit off a piece of good chew. So strange to bury all the bullets I thought were true with a